Good morning, everyone. I'm very glad to be here, so thanks so much for taking your time today in the morning. Cool. Today in the morning, when I woke up, I obviously left my house to travel to Zurich, and unfortunately, I left my reusable bottle at home, but I was thirsty. So what did I do? I went to a local supermarket, got myself a bottle of water, and drank it on the train. And when I was done, I disposed of it in a bin right at the train station and moved on with my life. But it took me a second to realize that I'm not the only one who moves on with his life. Similar holds true to the PET bottle that was just about to be collected, then transported to a recycling facility, incineration plant, or eventually exported to another country. After all, Switzerland already has a circular economy for plastics, right? Dear people in Switzerland, every single year, we only give a second life to plastics in 12% of all the cases. That amounts to 704,000 tons of plastic waste that leaves our linear economy every single year. And on a per capita basis, that's approximately 83 kilograms of plastic waste that is lost in our economy. Now, why did I address you as dear people in Switzerland and not as Swiss people? The point is that the problem that we're facing is not local. We're talking about a global crisis that is even worse when you look at global figures. In essence, we heard this number before, only 9% of plastics stay in our economy. 91% are either landfilled, incinerated, or end up in nature. Now, the good news is that the situation is changing, and the ones who have the power in their hands are the consumer brands. Now, with the colleagues that presented right in front of me, we've learned how difficult it can be to navigate the waters of plastics. Because for consumer brands, who are the ones that are being criticized by consumers, investors, and regulators, it's really difficult to understand what they should do first. Should they think about reuse schemes? Should they support chemical recycling? Should they think about offsetting their use of plastics? It's difficult. The point is that they have to move, though, because increasingly consumers want to see a switch, as 1 out of 3 individuals are actively choosing products that are not packed in plastic packaging. Just ask yourself, when was the last time that you were finding yourself in a store trying to identify a product and you were choosing the product that was packed in less plastic or eventually had a 100% recycled content seal? Now, it's not only the consumers that want consumer brands to move, but also investors who increasingly see that using single-use plastics and using virgin content is a business risk. But also we see a global top-down movement of nation-states, of the UN, that calls companies and countries to really act on plastic pollution. And now let's take a step back and look at this from a systems perspective. And this is a very messy slide, as you can see, and that's how reality looks like today. On the one hand, we have the plastic value chain with the consumer brands that are completely detached from the solutions. And the major reason for this is that we're literally incinerating or burning down the tracks that we need to get from status quo today to the solutions of tomorrow. And what we do at Ampliphi is that we come in and we build the tracks. We come in and restore the tracks to help the plastic value chain move from the today very linear status quo to a circular economy of tomorrow. Now, how do we do all of this? And to approach this very difficult question, I think I started with a very similar approach to most of the carbon accounting companies that you have potentially listened to yesterday. Namely, we asked ourselves a question that goes back to one of the first management lectures that I had at university, which is basically, okay, how do you tackle a complex problem? And what can you do to actually incentivize people to manage stuff? Turns out that it's all about measurement. It's all about creating accountability, creating transparency, so that decision makers know what to do and can inform their decisions. And that's really what we enable with our plastic management and accounting platform. Think about carbon accounting platforms. We've heard a few yesterday. Very amazing model. models really reaching scale quickly, what we do is that we bring a similar approach from first measuring plastic footprints, then using the information to help companies reduce the footprint, up to helping them communicate, and bring this entire industry to the plastics and circular economy space. That's what we are. That's where we are the first movers in. So let's just have a brief look at our dashboard, which is fully operational and used by a handful of clients already. We started earlier this year, but are now working with several clients in the beauty industry, personal care, packaged foods, and beverage industry. And we really have these three components that we look at: measure, reduce, communicate. Now, let's just briefly start with the measurement side of things. When we talk about measurement, we don't use the term carbon accounting because the impacts of plastics go beyond carbon. After all, it's not the greenhouse gases only that matter when we look at plastics, but the ecosystem impact that is caused when plastics leave our economy. Now, there are also like threefold. First, we have the environmental issues that most people in this room will be aware of, with biodiversity that is affected, with all the different animals in the marine ecosystems that are impaired with their lifestyles. But then second, we also have the social issues where we think about air pollution, where we think about microplastics that are being ingested when you eat, when you drink, and all of this. And thirdly, it's also the economic aspects where we have cleanup costs that are costs, we have the opportunity costs from like touristic areas that suffer revenues when plastics are polluting the beaches. So there's a real need to help companies understand the impacts that their like leaked plastics, the plastics that end up in nature, have. And that's what we enable them through the process of plastic accounting. So what we do is that we help them measure their plastic waste generation, help them identify what percentage of this plastic waste generation is at risk of ending up in nature, and then lastly, really inform their actions by visualizing their footprint in a transparent dashboard that allows them to break down their different components of their plastic footprint. Now, the important thing is that the dashboard is one pillar of our business model, but the more promising one, at least in my opinion, is the recommendation hub and the connected marketplace that we enable. Now, let's go back to the sort of measurement and analysis where we visualize the plastic footprint and the intricacies of every single company's use of plastic. This gives us a lot of information and a lot of insights into the world of one consumer brand. And we use these insights to automatically derive recommendations that we can provide to the brand. Because as you can imagine, we've heard principles of reduce, reuse, recycle. We can break them down into very standardized categories that apply to every single consumer brand in a given industry. So we do obviously differentiate by industry sector so that we can provide recommendations to food and beverage brands that are very different from the personal care brands. But the massive database that we built allows us to really provide bespoke recommendations on a level that you get from professional consultancies that are doing nothing but really coming up with recommendations. And now the interesting bit is that every single recommendation that we provide to the brand is connected to a network of solution providers who are organizations that help a consumer brand either access a new packaging material or implement the reuse system, allow them to invest in systems change, because we always follow the three principles again of reduce where you can reduce, optimize the plastics that remain, and thirdly, amplify your impact by supporting impact investment opportunities. Now, of course, it is very difficult for brands to navigate through these uncharted waters without having someone who holds their hand, and that's exactly what we do, specifically in the launch phase and the sort of like earlier stage phase where we're currently in. So beyond the bespoke consulting and the plastic accounting, we also help the brand achieve all the ROI through communications, which means that we help them engage with their stakeholders, consumers, investors, and regulators. Plus, we also help them facilitate reporting that is increasingly getting mandatory in countries like the UK, in Germany, in the EU in general, but also in the US, where we see extended producer responsibility schemes entering the limelight. Now, what is the opportunity that we're talking about, and what is the traction that we've generated so far? We started Ampliphi earlier this year, and my co-founder and I both worked in the industry for many years, and we identified there's a massive need to really make most out of the economic pressure, the regulatory development, and the stakeholder concerns that we face today. We've seen it before. The numbers are massive. The industry is massive. Just to give you a little bit of a hint, what that means, the 1.06 billion that we see as a total addressable market size by 2025. The global plastic packaging industry every single year is $280 billion US, which means that if we manage to help our consumer brands really make most out of the data that they have and connect them to solution providers, we can talk about the really big numbers here. So we're supported by different organizations, different advisors. It's the two co-founders. We're still fully bootstrapped. We're currently looking for strategic partners who can help us get access to new consumer brands, 2 strategic partnerships, and 3 potential investment opportunities. So thanks so much, and hopefully you have a great day.